The quality of my life will never exceed the quality of my questions. I must ask outstanding questions. As I've learned about the brain over the last few years, I've gotten to see how important attention is in shaping how we think. And the most immediate way of directing attention is through asking questions. The questions you ask tell your brain where to go and how to think. Good ones lead to a really productive brain, while bad ones get you stuck or take you down roads you don't want to go. In this video, I want to share 5 questions that have helped me build a better brain and a more intentional life. Question number 1. How much is an answer worth? The point of this question is to make a fuzzy decision more objective and quantifiable. Here's how it works. First, think about a decision you want to make, whether it's moving to a new state or pursuing a new career. Next, calculate the cost of that possible decision, whether in time or money. For example, if a cross-country move is going to cost you about $20,000, that's your starting number. Or if a new college degree is going to take you 4 years to complete, use that number. Next, decide on an answer budget. I usually use 10%. This is the portion you're going to use to answer that question. Now let's bring it all together. For the moving example, if the cost of the move is about $20,000 and your answer budget is 10%, that means you can spend about $2,000 to see if that is the decision you really want. You can use that money to take a trip to the new city, pay for a tour guide, rent an Airbnb in the exact neighborhood you plan to live. For the degree example, you can do the same thing. Before embarking on a 4-year journey, find an internship or an entry-level job that gets you access to the kind of career or people you're interested in and work there for about 4 to 6 months, or 10% of 4 years. All of the people I know who are most satisfied with their lives used some version of this on their way to where they are now. They made small bets on the future and were quick to pivot when something wasn't a good fit. They put their money and time on the line in order to find the best option for them. And you can do the same thing. So what's a decision you're struggling with right now? And how can you spend 10% to find an answer? Question number 2, what would this look like if it were easy? Now, this question is one I shamelessly stole from Tim Ferriss, but there's also a really nerdy way of thinking about it that is going to make it really useful. To help explain why this question is so powerful, you first have to know a little bit about change theory and force field analysis. In the early 20th century, there was a guy named Kurt Lewin who led the way in a new field of research called social psychology. He argued that our lives were not merely a product of internal personalities or past experiences. Rather, there were current, meaningful social influences dictating not only how we behaved, but even who we became. To help illustrate this principle, he created 2 tools we still use today. The first is a 3-stage model, which includes unfreezing, movement, and refreezing, and it became known as Lewin's change theory. His model explains the process of change, from unfreezing your current undesired state to then moving toward your goal, and then finally refreezing at your desired destination. The components that make all of that possible is best explained through Lewin's second tool, force field analysis. This change management model helps the user identify what factors are actively supporting change, fighting change, and how to manipulate all of them to shift your equilibrium. Okay, if you're still with me, I promise this all comes together. In the picture, you can see a few of these elements at play. Driving forces are the ones that push a person towards some change in a specific life area. Restraining forces are the factors that counter the other ones, actively resisting change. And equilibrium is the state of being where driving and restraining forces equal each other, which means no change can occur. Most people exist in equilibrium most of the time. They live their lives without significant change day to day or even year to year. But why? Because the factors of each are in balance. They might be motivated to change something, but the factors fighting against that change are equal in strength. Identifying these parts also helps explain why some people start new habits every new year only to abandon them after a few days. Motivation gave them a temporary boost in driving force, but without appropriately identifying the restraining forces and preparing for them, their motivation was destroyed and the equilibrium kept intact. So coming back around, how does Tim Ferriss's question relate to Lewin's change theory? If change is a factor of competing forces, then in order to change any area, you simply need to strengthen the driving forces and weaken the restraining ones. Tim's question focuses on the latter. By asking the question, what would this look like if it were easy? You investigate how to make the straining forces less powerful. And there are two ways to do this: reduce and redefine. The first method is to use the question to identify any ways to reduce the straining factors keeping you from change. Let's say the change you want to make is to start going to the gym 3 times a week. The restraining factors in this case are the events, demands, and conflicts you'll encounter during each one of those 3 different days you try to go to the gym. One solution then is to reduce that number from 3 to 1. This simple change increases your chances of success by a significant margin, and anyone making it to the gym 52 times a year is going to be in better shape than a person who went 3 times a week for only 1 month all the way a year ago. James Clear writes about small habits for precisely this reason. Small changes over a sustained period of time will always have a more significant impact than big changes that burn out quickly. The second method is to redefine what it is you're trying to accomplish. Think of this approach as sidestepping the obstacles in your way, rather than trying to just brute force through them. If we continue with the gym example, a few redefining options come to mind. If your reason for going to the gym is to improve your health, what other things can you do to accomplish that goal? You can take morning walks or jogs in your neighborhood, you can clean up your diet, or you can take the money you would have spent on a gym membership and hire a health coach. The method aims at accomplishing the same goal, but through different means. By asking, what would this look like if it were easy? You're able to shake off the stuckness and reevaluate all of the options available to you. Taking a 20-minute walk every morning might seem wrong if your goal is to go to the gym 3 times a week. But if working out isn't really your goal, then the gym was just a vehicle, and you can choose a different one to reach your real goal. When we take the time to look at what we want beyond the thing we think we need, that is how possibilities are born. And possibility gives us options, and options give us back the power to make what we want as easy as we need it to be. Question number 3, what do you believe to be true that most people don't? Peter Thiel is a controversial figure and as opposite to my people-pleasing self as possible, but he knows a thing about finding opportunities and then turning those opportunities into billion-dollar wins. In his book 0 to 1, Thiel explains how he looks for openings where he can create something new, where business can make a thing out of nothing. The trick then is to develop your ability to discover these types of openings, and it's a skill that can be developed. The way to start is by asking his question: what important truth do very few people agree with you on? Or as I like to reword it, what do you believe to be true that most people don't? The goal isn't to be contrarian merely for the sake of it. Instead, the goal is to find the opportunities only you can understand because of your experience, context, beliefs, challenges, resources, and desires. But why does this work? Because opinions make decisions easier. Take Basecamp, one of the most opinionated companies of all time. They argued for the benefits of remote work a decade before the pandemic made it a necessity. They don't hire middle managers, and they've chosen for over 15 years to stay small in a world that is pushing them to be big. One idea they preach again and again is that every decision they make should make their lives and their businesses easier. When you don't know what you believe, everything becomes an argument. Everything is debatable. But when you stand for something, decisions are obvious. Strong opinions make decisions simple because beliefs act as a filter. It's not a coincidence that both Peter Thiel and Jason Fried have had major success in their careers, and yet they are diametrically opposed on pretty much everything. The two men couldn't be more different, and that is precisely their advantage. You need to stand for something. You need to own and voice your opinions. You need to not shy away from believing differently, because where you differ is where you'll dominate. Question number 4, what am I willing to struggle for? Have you ever heard of the musician Mark Manson? Probably not, since Mark gave up on that dream more than a decade ago. But he used to dream about being a rock star. He would imagine himself rocking out a guitar in front of thousands of screaming fans. He could envision the tour bus and the interviews and the endorsement deals. But at the end of the day, none of that mattered because he couldn't bring himself to do the one thing that did: practice the guitar. He writes, I was in love with the result. The image of me on stage, people cheering, me rocking out, pouring my heart into what I'm playing. But I wasn't in love with the process. I was in love not with the fight, but only the victory. The good news is that Mark did find something he was willing to struggle for. Right, he fell in love with the process. The late nights, the endless rounds of editing, and the years of anonymity before his books landed on the New York Times bestseller lists. Mark was only able to find success after he stopped focusing on it. When we concentrate solely on what we want, we often miss the path that it will take us there. A better strategy is to define what we want, take a step back, and focus on the pains that would make it possible. If you want to become a famous musician, practicing an instrument should be a given. If you want to write a book, scheduling consistent writing blocks is a must. And if you want to retire early, then you have to build the discipline of saving. It's a non-negotiable. Success in any domain is always the byproduct of consistent cost. Professional athletes train harder and longer than everyone else. Professional writers hit their daily word counts every day for decades. And professional entrepreneurs figure out how to push their risk tolerance all the way to the limits and beyond. Whether an athlete wins an event boils down to how consistently they pay their dues in training. The same is true for any creative or business endeavor. You cannot control your success, but you can control all of the elements that make it possible. You can choose to pay the price others are unwilling to pay. Or as actress Sally Field likes to say, the struggle is the work. Question number 5, who do I need to spend more time with? We've all heard the quote that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Jim Rohn could have borrowed that idea from any one of a dozen different ancient books, but the truth of that statement is a little more complicated. In 2018, David Burkus, professor of innovation at ORU, wrote an article on why the average of 5 rule drastically simplifies how influence actually works in our lives. He says influence doesn't stop anywhere near the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's far more dispersed, and research suggests it includes people you haven't even met. He cites a number of studies, but the most powerful one is on obesity. If you have an obese friend, you are 45% more likely to be obese yourself. If your friend's friend is obese, that number is 20%. And if it's your friend's friend's friend, you still have a 10% chance. Similar studies were conducted on smoking, happiness, and income, and in each case, similar numbers were found. It's not just who you know that influences you, it's who they know, and who the friends of your friends know too. The web spans really, really wide, echoing how everything is actually interconnected. But rather than feed into this web and start believing that everything is out of your control, I want you to see that the opposite is true. When asking the question, who do I need to spend more time with? The answer is almost always yourself. When we are alone, we become the shapers of our lives. We gain the opportunity to sit and think and dissect what is actually going on inside. In these moments, we re-equip our mind and bodies with the energy to say no, to choose our best interests, and to detach ourselves from the web of expectations we often find ourselves completely stuck in. Now, for this to be true, Rohn and Burkus don't have to be wrong. Rather, if the existence of so many external forces is a certainty, then by spending time alone, we get to decide the degree to which those things actually impact us. Solitude acts as a filter so that regardless of what our friends or our friends' friends are doing with their lives, we can choose differently. We can choose us. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, I have a gift for you called the Question Library, where you can find dozens of more questions just as powerful as these were. You can use the link in the description below. Thanks for watching.